There's a major strike on the docks of this country. Where and how much will it affect all of us? Let's bring in the guy who is one of the leading logistics experts in all of the world. We're lucky enough to have him as a friend of the show, Jonathan Rosenthal, everybody. Hi, John. Unmute John for me, please. Unmute him.
Always great, Mark. How do you read?
You sound good, and thank you so much for. I kind of put up the bat beam to try to get a hold of you because this strikes me as huge. You'll pardon the expression, strikes me. I mean, this I thought would be threatened, John, but I didn't necessarily think they would actually strike these dock workers. What is this about, and where is this happening?
Well, so it's the ILA. We really have two unions, longshore unions in the United States that are principally responsible for the ports, for the docks. The ILA is the East Coast and some of the South. Those are gateway ports. And the West Coast is the ILWU for the most part. So between those two unions, they pretty much control port access. So the ILWU, I think 18 months ago, signed a 3-year contract. And they had a substantial increase. I think it was 35%, something like that. So substantial increase in their pay and in their benefits. I think it's now the ILA's contract is up and they're negotiating that deal. I think this was anticipated. So people, that were shipping to the U.S. imports anticipated this, and they rerouted to other ports like the West Coast. It should not impact the West Coast, other than to say that you've got additional capacity or additional demand here on the West Coast. But that's a long schlep, right? If you're
Well, it's interesting that you're saying this, though, because all I saw last night is, oh my God, this is going to cost the American economy blank billions of dollars, and this is going to, I mean, the hysteria around it seems substantial.
Well, look, supply chain, the costs associated with supply chain are very expensive. I mean, the pandemic was a great example of how fragile our systems are, and how massive disruption occurs when relatively minor things happen. Although the pandemic wasn't massive earthquake basically, but the estimates are that of the 8% inflation, about 200 basis points, 2 points of that 8% were due to supply chain issues. So that's a huge number. So yes, it means a lot. The strike that's going on, I mean, they're trying to get higher wages. I guess there's nothing wrong with that. That's what unions try to do. They try to support their workers. But I actually think that this is a much deeper battle. This is a battle that has gone on for centuries in many areas between technology and labor. When you begin to introduce advanced technologies, then there is a consequence, and that the guy that invented a tractor pissed off a lot of guys with shovels. I mean, that's just the way it is. Would we go back and say the tractor was a bad idea? Well, no, it wasn't a bad idea, but it certainly disrupted a whole bunch of guys with shovels. So I think that's exactly what's going on here. There is very advanced technology that we have not adopted in the United States. It involves the automation of terminals. It also involves information systems. That's what we really lack here in, I sent you some stuff this morning, Mark, just so you didn't think I was completely full of shit. I sent you some backup evidence. Our U.S. ports are some of the worst, lowest productive ports in the world, in part because we tend to eschew technology.
But this is the point, and this is where the shoe pinches. You're saying we tend to not integrate that technology because of the demands of labor?
Well, I think it's a number of things. I mean, there's certainly cost to technology, but I think the biggest impediment to promulgating technology at the ports, certainly the automation of the ports, which we have the technology to do. Much of that technology,
I thought it's already, I mean, a lot of the ports are automated already. I see nothing but machines. Yeah, go ahead.
Around the world. I mean, we have 12 ports in Los Angeles, 12 terminals in Los Angeles. I think 2 are fully automated. If you go to a place like Rotterdam, Rotterdam is almost all automated. So look, there's a consequence to that, and I don't blame the union and the workers for the disruption that's occurring to their lifestyle. That's perfectly natural, and it always happens. As I say, the guy with the shovel is pretty pissed off
Right.
when the tractor was invented. So, but the point here is that if you look historically, you cannot stop technology. You can slow it down, but you cannot stop technology. So the automation of the ports will occur over time. It's being resisted primarily by labor. But there's also something that is, I think, even bigger, which is not a labor issue so much as just a lack of foresightedness on our part in the U.S., which are information systems. So relative to supply chain, we have some of the least advanced technology being deployed for information. I mean, look, the first question you ask in logistics, where's my shit? Right? Like, where's my stuff? That's what you ask. Okay, we don't really have an ability to give you a good answer. What you really want to know is not just where my stuff is, when's it going to get here? And now don't confuse this with something like FedEx, where you can get that kind of information because they have embedded information systems. But we do not have those systems across the entire supply chain network. Those are siloed in places like Amazon and UPS and FedEx. They have pretty
Yeah,
good.
you've made this point, I think, in prior conversations that we really lag in that technology, and I don't know if that's resistance or if that's cost or whatever, but now we see these inflection moments with organized labor, and I'm wondering if you feel as though this is going to be a long strike, and if it's resolved in a short time or in a long time, what will the resolution involve? And will it be a concession to some of these technologies to which you referred, or is it just going to be about money?
Well, no, it's not just about money. That's certainly a big issue. I'm told that it's going to be long and painful in terms of the strike, but you actually never really know. The one thing we don't learn from history is that we don't learn from history. And so if you look back at, I think the information side of this, and automation is part of it, is going to be enormously disruptive. It's going to be as disruptive as the introduction of the container. In 1963, we introduced something called a container. That reduced your labor cost and your transportation cost by 80%. That was the catalyst for globalization. All of a sudden, you could get labor in China, you could get raw materials in Africa because your transportation costs went down so much. Now, what did they do? You reduce labor by 80%. You can imagine that the guys on the docks were pretty pissed off. Like, where's my job, right? So what they ended up doing after lots and lots of headaches and lots of dissent is that they agreed, the terminal operators and the shippers agreed to pay the workers to go home through retirement. So they said to you, Mark, you're a 40-year-old guy, and we know you got a good job. We're going to eliminate your job, but we're going to pay you through retirement. Just go home. You'll get all your money, but we're not going to replace your job. Now, that might be kind of the solution here that ultimately gets deployed. I don't know.
It's a buyout, essentially, is what you're
It's a
talking
buyout,
about.
exactly.
Right.
It's a buyout, and that could happen. But you will. I do not believe that you can stop the deployment of technology. And the truth is that we can significantly decrease not only the cost of shipping, which obviously gets embedded in the cost that you pay as a consumer, right? Part of the shipping cost has to get paid by the consumer. So it's partly that. It will reduce the cost. Better information will reduce the cost, but it also reduces other things. I mean, we own a few trucking companies, and our trucks wait in line at the terminals for 2 to 3 hours waiting to get in. Why? Because the information systems are terrible. And the supply chain has many touch points, right? So a container moving from Shanghai to Ohio is estimated to be touched 24 times by 24 different software operating systems. So every time it gets touched, if there's friction in that system, a truck waiting in line, a trailer not getting stripped at a warehouse on time, not having sufficient labor. I mean, all of these touch points are systemic friction. Information is the key to reducing systemic friction. So, and
that gets to the technology. John, I've got to wrap up, but I love that you've given us two things. I think sort of a granular view of what's happening now. It might be quite a while before they get this resolved, and also sort of the jetliner view of this, which is that this is a technology that has been slow to evolve in this country particularly, and we've got to catch up, and there may have to be concessions and payouts, and it sounds to me like there are unions pushing back. It may be that shovel tractor analogy very much played out here in the ports. Love it when you come. Thank you for responding to my last-minute entreaty. Yeah,
always great.
The best. John Rosenthal, everybody. Thanks. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.